It's gonna get better. Never stay the same. It's gonna get better. It's gonna get better.
Hello and welcome to the Ericka James Show, where we are all about life on purpose. We are going to talk about knowing your identity today, and I am so excited. But first, let me tell you a little bit about the show and what we're up to today in today's episode. I'm taking years of my transformational work, my speaking, my training, and the gift of the prophetic to really help us walk in our purpose. I have spent the last 30 years of my life leading and guiding thousands of people to become the fullness of who they were created to be. Stick with me and we're going to get there. So excited. But I want to tell you where this journey started for me. It really started about the age of 12. And I remember I got my very first journal. And it was burgundy. It had lines on it. It was cloth covered. It was so cute. It had little yellow and white flowers on it. And the very first poem I wrote in that journal went something like this. You are unique. In all the history of the world, there's never been anyone quite like you. At the age of 12, those weren't just words in a journal to me. I started to take them seriously. And I committed my life to answering two questions. Who am I? And what was I created to do? I am solely committed to living all out. I have a real vision of not leaving anything on the table, and I want to challenge us to do the same. One of the things we're going to be talking about on the show today is about knowing your identity. This is a huge one. This is something that I get to work with individuals with all the time, and it's about understanding that you are not your past. It's about understanding that there is something locked in your DNA, that when we get to unlock it, you are literally going to be crystal clear. It was predestined. And oftentimes we spend our lives looking over here for our identity, over there. I certainly know I did. I thought it came from my family, thought it came from my friends, thought it came from titles, thought it came from external looks. It's crazy when you look at the statistics, because 51% of people do not know their identity. And when we go back to the teenage years where a lot of that is formulated, only 61% of teenagers, actually 61% of teenagers say they don't have a clue about who they are. And what I've learned in those formative years, when we're teenagers, we make some decisions. And a lot of times we live the rest of our lives out of those decisions. And oftentimes they're not even true. So this process has been a lifelong process for me to know who I am and now get to build something extraordinary. And I'm so excited that you're with me to do that today. I want to talk about a couple different types of identity. These are Ericka-isms. You're going to hear me talk about Ericka-isms. So I have what I call your horizontal identity. And that's your identity. If you had a horizontal line and it was from you right now backwards, a lot of times we are looking back to our past, and I call it duct taping. We're duct taping together our identity. And far too often, you all, our little hearts get wounded, we get brokenness on the way, and we kind of put that in with the duct tape, and it all kind of limps forward to be who we think we are. But I want to submit to you that it's much deeper than that. I want to just have you think for a moment, what if we could understand that literally locked within us is the answer to everything we need? If we would just spend the time to do the work, to look within, to really spend that quiet time. I am huge about quiet time. I can't say that enough. Actually, for years, I thought I was an extrovert because I love people. I thought that was the definition of extrovert. And then I had a psychologist friend of mine say, oh no, Ericka, you're either introvert or extrovert based on where you get your energy. And so I love getting refueled, rejuvenated in quiet time. So that is one of my life mantras you're going to hear me remind you about over and over again. There is so much spinning around us right now. There is so much happening in the world right now. I truly believe that if you and I could truly tap in to that power and that greatness that was placed within us, that we could release something that would change the world. Every single, not some of them, but every single issue that we see in the world right now, it's locked within us. We hold the solution locked within us, I should say. So as I mentioned, that horizontal identity is not who you really are. And I call it the vertical identity, that identity that we have to connect upwards with our creator, whatever you call your creator, but wherever you are, it's about tapping in to that higher purpose because you were created with a specific blueprint in mind. We're going to talk about how we do that, but I want you to know first what is possible. So I want you to just imagine, it doesn't take long to turn on the news right now and see everything that is happening. The answer is within us. We can often look over here and say, well, why don't they do this? Or why don't this group of people do that? But the answer is within you. And it's about taking that key and unlocking it. So I'm so excited about this topic of knowing your identity. Because when we understand that inside of us is a treasure map, the world wants to call it mindfulness, where you just stop and get centered and come back to remembering who you are. It is a real process. I do it every single night. Every single night I stop and I'm like, okay, let me shake off the day, let me shake off the circumstances. How am I doing? What's really going on? And then, how am I going to realign with who I'm created to be? And I want to offer you a question. Every morning when you get up, before you set your feet on the ground, before you go to brush your teeth, whatever your morning routine is, what if you asked yourself, what can I do today to close the gap? Close the gap between where you are right now and who you were created to be. But first, we have to know our identity. But it's in there. When we take away the circumstances, we take away the stress, we take away the obligations, we peel back all of those things, and we start to say, wait a minute, who am I? What are the things I love? What are the things I'm really good at? We're going to talk about all of this. But first, I want you to know your identity comes from God, not from the world, not even from your family. That life experience you had, it equipped you to do what you're called to do and walk out your purpose. But it wasn't meant to define you. And when we begin to loose those shackles and uncover the fullness of who we're created to be, life becomes unstoppable. Imagine your life, so exciting, so passionate, that the hard part is to stop. Like, well, I've got to stop for a minute because I've got to take care of my family. I've got to do this over here. But you actually are so enthralled and engaged in who you were called to be and what you're called to build that, your passion's ignited. So that's what knowing your identity does for you. And yes, it is possible, no matter what you've been through. So when we come back, we're going to talk about 3 power steps, specific steps that you can implement right away to get going on uncovering, realizing, or even taking your identity to the next level. So we can actually walk in, I'm just going to call it your extraordinary. And most of all, build something extraordinary. So stay with me. We'll be right back.